back to Cannabis Compass. My name is Alex, I'm your host. Tonight we're out here at High Society, our monthly cannabis community event at Cava & Co. in San Marco. We meet 7 to 10, and tonight we are interviewing some of our friends that come out to our event, getting some different perspectives on different cannabis-themed questions. So come join us and enjoy. Do you think that cannabis should be a part of mainstream medicine, and why or why not?
Absolutely. And thanks that at least medically legal in the state of Florida, I think we're seeing a greater increase of integration with medical cannabis into mainstream medicine. The last I checked, we had over 900,000 people as part of the state marijuana registry. That's pretty good. It's going up every week. So I think as people become more comfortable with it, as physicians become more comfortable with their patients being on cannabis, I think we'll see a greater integration of medical marijuana into the medical mainstream. And hopefully, I think the sky's the limit. It can only go up from here.
Yes, of course. I actually think that people should be trying cannabis before they try pills. I think that cannabis should be the first thing that you try, not the last thing after everything else has failed.
Yes.
And you're addicted, and now you can't function at all from the complications from some of these medicines. And cannabis is so simple. Try it. Maybe it won't be the answer. Maybe it will. And if it works for you, it's going to be so much less stressful on your body.
I do. I think that it should be just as normalized as a Xanax. I actually just was in a teen parenting group, and the parents were having a debate on, I smoke, I caught my teen smoking, what should I do? And my response was, well, if you're in a legal state, I would suggest getting them a card and showing them how to dose properly, instead of going and getting them Xanax or Adderall or Vicodin or whatever else and worry about those side effects. I would much rather the more minimal side effects of cannabis, in my opinion, more minimal.
What is your first memorable experience with cannabis?
So my first time with cannabis was I smoked with my friends. I was 17. I smoked before, but I never got that feeling. But that day we smoked 3 Dutch Masters back to back and everything. And I'm smoking, and the next thing I know, after that third one, I don't know. I felt it hitting me, and I felt like I was stuck in the chair. And my friend passed me the joint, and when he passed it to me, I couldn't see it because I was so high, and it was just so dark. The next thing I know, it grew, and it made that noise. Like, it made that noise, and I started laughing 30 minutes. All I thought was half-baked. All I thought was, oh my God, this shit is real. Like, that's all I thought when I seen that. I said, half-baked was not lying. No one of them chips was big in there, but that was my first time experience, and I felt like it was a 5-hour dream. I kept asking people the whole night that, you sure this is real? Everything happening. For some reason that night,
Didn't feel real.
it was just too much stuff going on that normally doesn't go on. That normally was a chill spot where nothing happens, but it was just too much going on. And all I know is I end up drinking water out of goddamn coffee mug. I couldn't find no cups. I was thirsty. It was a good night though, but I started about 7. The high lasted about like the 12 or 1.
So my first time ever smoking, I was doing it to make my boyfriend mad because he would always go and smoke and I didn't like it. So anyways, I go to his house and smoke with his brother, and it's like a half mile away from where I live. I leave there. I smoked 1 bowl. They left me in the room with 1 bowl, and I smoked the whole bowl, and then I walk out, and I was like, I gotta go home. I was so paranoid.
No.
I leave there, and I'm doing like 15 miles an hour. I could not figure out what the gas or the brake was. I was out of there. And he got home, and I'm trying to fake asleep, and he's like, you're not asleep. And I was like, but I'm not high.
I'm not high. That's funny. That is funny. And then if you could change one misconception about cannabis, there's many, but if you could change
There
one,
are many.
what would it be?
The one that the people from like the 50s and the 60s saying that it's bad for you and it's a gateway drug. Honestly, if we could reach that generation of people, we would be a lot better off, just because they're the ones pushing the misconception that marijuana is the gateway to other drugs and stuff like that, because that's what was pushed on them during the war on drugs and stuff like that. So if we could just educate and tap into that older community, then that's the biggest thing.
I agree with you.
Gosh, there's a lot out there. I guess one of the big ones that I find, as far as the methodologies that you can use it for, a lot of people think you can only smoke the flower. There's so much more that's out there. There's beverages, there's sprays, there's gummies, there's oils, there's drops, there's creams. There's even more that I'm missing. So, a lot of people think, well, gosh, I'm going to smoke a cigarette and I'm going to smell, and I can't do it at work. And I have to tell people, no, there's a lot you could do. You could use a vape, which is pretty conspicuous. You could put some drops into your morning coffee and just really sip it throughout the day. You could maybe rub some creams on areas that have pain, wear a patch. So there's a lot out there that you can use to go about your day, to work, to function, but to still get some therapeutic benefit from the cannabis. So that's probably one of the big misconceptions that I find.
How do you think the public perception of cannabis has changed in the last several years?
So thankfully, I think that it's gotten a little bit more lax. People are more educated. There was just so many years that we were just misinformed. We were told the incorrect information, so we didn't know. We were told that cannabis was something similar to heroin, and it's not. It's something that can be used as medicine for our bodies. It can be used to clean water. It can be used to make ropes and so many other things. The plant is amazing, and unfortunately we were just taught wrong, and now we're learning the correct way, and I'm so happy to be a part of changing the societal narrative that has been the norm and is changing and continuing to change in the positive direction.
So I think that a lot of the old stereotypes have kind of disappeared. It's not the, lazy stoner listening to reggae music.
That's okay too.
It is. I love reggae music. It's now looked at as something that's actually helping people, that's providing, medicine, and all sorts of people outside of those stereotypes are using marijuana now as medicine or for recreation. In our case in Florida, medicine. But so that's, I just think that it's becoming a lot more accepted.
Today, it's very mainstream. It's going to be, it's very popularized with, especially everybody wanting to go, recreational, nationwide. But I think it played, but it's been always, rappers. You got to think about Dr. Dre had an album called The Chronic. Some of our favorite songs, you can literally make up a playlist of nothing but cannabis songs. So I believe it always played a big part, But like you said, people try to make it look bad, even on negative, Think about Reefer Madness. Reefer Madness, people still go off of that. I can tell when somebody watch Reefer Madness the way they talk down about him. What you watch, Reefer Madness? So definitely, but I think it plays a huge role. Athletes use it a lot. Yeah. Like these professional, leagues are now realizing it is a form of medicine. Yeah. I'd rather you be, on something that's not going to have side effects than you be addicted to painkillers who have a ton of side effects. But no, I think it's a big, huge, just social, and it'll go hand in hand, and it's going to be one of the most popular things in 10 to 15 years from now. It's the great green rush, I heard people call it. So,
right. If you think back to really how cannabis got illegal in the first place was, reefer madness. Started out racism based, growing in Mexico, the jazz clubs with African American, and it really became, similar to how I feel psychedelics got. They targeted the hipster protesters of the Vietnam War because they were using that. So, the government has used it. There's absolutely no reason cannabis should be a controlled substance. And for example, my parents, teacher and former Marine, also law enforcement, now, they don't smoke, but they utilize edibles and vape pens, and they got arthritis, they work on a farm and have trouble sleeping and things like that. So as me getting kicked out, not really kicked out, but in trouble in high school for having weed, and then now my parents really seeing the health benefits to it, and
Full circle.
yeah, the boomers, if that's politically correct, now seeing that it's not the devil it was made out to be, it can be helpful. I think that's really changed public perception on that big time. I think it's not as taboo anymore. Like, it's madness on a military base that you can go buy a bottle of Jack Daniels, but you can't go get cannabis without losing your entire career or job. So it's just my personal opinion. I think people are understanding how bad alcohol is.
Gosh, how has cannabis influenced your lifestyle or wellness?
So with dealing with cannabis, like, I'm sure everybody feel like it's bad on your health, but it's actually done really good for me. Like, it helps motivate me to go to the gym and everything like that. It kind of gives me that pep and that energy jump that I need to start my day and go to the gym and actually work out and stuff like that. So I will say that cannabis has influenced my life in a good way.
Fast forward from that time when I was about 18 to about 10 years later when I would be disabled. And dating a different guy that, surprise, was also cannabis friendly. And I remember him offering me to smoke, and I was like, I got really emotional because he knew how I felt about doing drugs. And I was a mom, so I didn't want to do any drugs. And he was like, you literally have 13 prescriptions right here. And then he made me do the research with him on the medicine I was taking.
Aww.
And then I smoked a joint. And it did not affect me the way that it did when I was young and healthy. And,
And the last story we heard.
Right. I instantly noticed the medical benefits.
Have you ever used cannabis for a health condition? And if so, was it helpful?
Yeah, that's exactly what I use cannabis for. I have chronic pain. I was recommended for back surgeries, which are very risky. So instead of a couple of back surgeries, I decided to turn to medical marijuana. And I didn't want to take all the drugs that the doctors were giving me, highly addictive medicines that honestly weren't very effective when I did try them. So cannabis is working. I eat it, I smoke it, I vape it, so it's keeping me going.
Background, I was Air Force intelligence for a little over 10 years, and as an analyst, your job is risk management for the troops. You do intelligence briefings. They think we have a crystal ball, but we don't. You just have to prepare people for missions and hope for the best. So when you get out, that training doesn't stop. You tend to overthink, overanalyze, and that type of thing. So, and we all know sleeping, if you stay up worrying, you're gonna not get good REM sleep, and then the cycle is gonna continue the next. So, I think those nights where you do have racing thoughts, a good, I like the edible with CBD, CBN, and THC, like hybrid, and then sometimes a nice blunt before bed. It's real cathartic, And, I notice I track my watch with Apple and others, my REM sleep, deep sleep, it gets there. Where if I, just take simple melatonin, I may get like 8 hours, but it stays light sleep. So, I've really experimented with it differently. So, yeah, people underestimate the power of sleep, building muscle, anything you do, you need memory, coordination, you need that recharge.
So what would you say your go-to strain or product is and why?
So I actually have a really hard time finding this, but Granddaddy Perp. It's a classic OG indica that I've known about since I was much younger than I am now. We'll just say that. And I guess it's just, there's something about it that,
No, I like her. You like a lot of that little with some pinene.
There we go. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. The
You
terpene
probably
profile.
like Bubba 98 too.
Okay.
Yeah. Never know. But thanks for joining us. Thanks for answering some questions here at High Society. And
let's go to an unknown world. If a storm comes, I won't give up. Let's sing while riding away.